Alright, in this video we'll talk about some very underrated Beach Boys albums. At least I feel that way. I know the title of this video might be a little bit clickbaity because obviously not everybody else hates these albums, but probably 90% even of the Beach Boys fans find these albums more or less lackluster, and I completely disagree. I actually love all these albums, and I chose one album from each decade of like the three main decades of this group, meaning 60s, 70s, and 80s. I could have added 90s into it as well, but well, there's only really one studio album from that decade, so it doesn't really make any sense to include that. And to be honest, I actually really like Summer in Paradise, so let's just put that out there. Let's go straight into it. I have over here the first one, Smiley Smile, and this is gonna be sort of a review thing. I'm gonna go through each album track by track, but I'm gonna be doing reviews, like separate reviews of each albums anyway later in the game. I'm not sure when I'm gonna be continuing my review series because it seems that those album reviews don't really gain that much interest. But I don't know, if you want to see more of the reviews, I'm gonna continue them at some point if people really want to see them, but I don't know because it hasn't really felt that way. It seems that people like to see more of these, not maybe current, but rambly videos by me. I don't know. But, well, let's start off with the packaging. The album cover, I think, is probably the greatest that the Beach Boys ever had. It's definitely in the top 3. It's just so legendary. I completely love the vibe on it, and it completely represents the music on the album. Oh, I'm sorry, the reflection. I wasn't really paying attention to that. But you just got to love this, and even the back cover. And usually I'm a fan of the kind of album covers that show actually the artist or the group in the cover, and that's one of my main nitpicks with a lot of the Beach Boys album covers, that they didn't include themselves on it, which I hate that usually. But in this case, this is very artistic. I really love it. And look at the animals. I just have to point these out. Even they are vibing completely. And this album is basically like, what do I know about it? I don't know. But this is kind of like the stoner, the king of the stoner albums, really. I don't really know anything about that stuff, but to me, at least, it is. Even these animals are just high on the. I mean, you just have to love this. Come on, like look, even that tiny worm over there. It has a lot of details, and I love that cabin over there. It's great. It has that vibe, and the logo and the font. It's just perfection. It's really great. And I love this little wisdom in the back cover. The smile that you send out returns to you. And what this cover art sells to me, the music it just doesn't disappoint. It delivers completely. One of the biggest issues that I have with the Beach Boys history and fans of the group and historians and stuff like that, when it comes to stuff after Smile, it's all kind of just talked in a way that it doesn't matter. Like recently, it has been changing. It was just much more black and white when I became a hardcore fan, which was late in the game. I'm pretty young, so that was like a little bit over 10 years ago. And albums like Smiley Smile were just completely dismissed online, and you couldn't find any reviews, YouTube or elsewhere, where people would actually praise the late 60s output that they did, and the 70s especially. But we'll get into that a little bit later in this video. But Smiley Smile is always talked about comparing it to Smile, which is to me the biggest mistake that you can really do when you judge this album in any way, because this is completely its own thing. And to me, this is a fantastic album, one of the best that the group ever put out. It's so unique, and it's fun, it's creepy, it's the production is so I would love to. It's ahead of its time so much, and I hated that the recording and the story of this album is it's never talked about. If it's talked about in a way that Smile. Brian wasn't able to finish Smile, so then the rest of the group tried to simplify it, and then this was born, and it was just a pile of crap. That's the story of Smiley Smile on pretty much all the the written words about it, and it just doesn't ring true to me because Brian is all around this thing. It's obviously a group effort, but Brian was there. He was behind most of this stuff over here and the decisions behind it. He was also behind the decision to shelve Smile. So it's just wrong to somehow simplify the story of this album as just like a mistake, or that it was just a blunder and stuff like that. And it's just sad to me because if you stop comparing this to anything else, you will find that it's actually pretty amazing. And any album that includes heroes and villains and good vibrations cannot be bad. And all the other stuff, well, it has different takes on the Smile material. Obviously, Vegetables and Wind Chimes, wonderful. And then there's other bits and parts of different melodies that were part of, for example, Heroes and Villains and all these things that would be released later on different songs. Like, for example, Fall Breaks and Back to Winter resembles a little bit of the Fire song, that instrumental from Smile, but it's not really the same track. It's completely its own thing. And about that track, actually, it's one of the most creepiest things that I've ever heard. It sounds like a theme song from an serial killer movie that was never made. It's just so creepy. I love it completely. Fall Breaks and Back to Winter, Mr. Woodpecker Symphony. It is just... I think I even like that more than Fire, to be honest. I completely love these different takes that they do here of those Smile session tracks, those classics like Vegetables, for example, which probably includes Paul McCartney, but nobody's really 100% sure, so I don't know. But apparently he is there eating that celery, but I don't know. I would love to hear that from Paul McCartney himself, but, well, probably never gonna happen. But She's Going Bald, that's just hilarious track. And not just hilarious, it's just not... These songs are not played just for laughs. It's not a humor album. It's not like a comedy album. But She's Going Bald is probably the most comedy-ish track on this whole album. And it's a complete group effort. I really love it. It's fun. It has different parts. It's just... so much fun. I really wish that the Beach Boys would have done more songs in this style, because there's no pressure. Like, this whole album is very interesting to hear because Pet Sounds and Smile obviously put a lot of pressure on Brian, and then this stuff is kind of completely opposite. It's so relaxed, and it's interesting how it seems that a lot of mainstream, pretty big artists actually dug this album when it was released, because Faces have a cover version, a live cover, I think, of Getting Hungry, actually, a few years later, but anyhow, and it rocks really hard, and that's a complete deep cut. Getting Hungry is not... I mean, did the Beach Boys ever even do that themselves live? I don't think so, but it's a great song. Jerry Garcia has been credited of saying that this was one of his all-time favorite albums. I don't know if that's true, but I've seen it in a lot of places, but I haven't been able to find the actual, the source for that. But I think it's probably true, and it is very psychedelic, so I can completely understand it. When it comes to the actual vocals and all the pieces and background vocals and all the different sections, they are actually done very precisely. So it's not like off-key singing and instrumental parts going all over the place. They all actually do what they are supposed to do, and it's perfect. So that's I think one of the reasons why this is different from a lot of other, so to speak, humor albums, because it's still done very professionally, if you know what I mean. All the tracks over here, even the stuff with Little Pad, for example, with the laughing, it's done very musically. It fits the song completely. It's so hard to describe in words what this album does to me. Wonderful, for example, which is one of the greatest songs of all time, and the version over here is kind of, you might think that it's partly just played for laughs, but I don't just feel it that way at all. I think it's actually kind of that little section that they have over there in the middle is just it's very creepy to me. Like a lot of these little quirks that they added here and there, with, for example, changing the pitch of the vocals higher or lower by slowing down the tape or making it go faster. The mood that those tricks create on this album are, to me, very interesting, because you don't really know whether you are supposed to laugh or kind of get scared. if you know what I mean, like somehow it creates a creepy atmosphere. It's not done as a chipmunk, like this Alvin chipmunk, style, just for fun. It's done very precisely. And then Whistle In, that ends this record, just a short little snippet of a song. It's a perfect end credits theme, and it fits. It just closes this album so nicely. And like, I could talk for hours about this thing, but it will mostly just be me praising it, because I think it's completely just underrated piece of music. And yeah, a lot of times still, I think it's gained a lot more attention during the last few decades probably, but it's still a sadness that it's talked pretty much always as a reference, kind of like a minor footnote to Smile, but nobody actually really talks about the story of Smiley Smile, because there must be a story behind it. I would love to know more about it. Smiley Smile, one of the great albums of all time. So let's move then to the 70s. And from the 70s, I could have picked a few other albums as well, but I ended up choosing 15 Big Ones. And yes, I actually love this album. I remember hearing this the first time about 10 years ago or something like that, and I hadn't read much about it. I had seen probably the Wikipedia page and read the reception part of it, how it was received, and well, let's put it this way: it wasn't very nice, and still on this day, this album is probably one of the most hated Beach Boys albums, and the whole Brian is Back era with this album and Love You is, well, it's a mixed bag, I think. Love You is these days mostly loved, but I'd say like 10 years ago it was probably 50-50. 50 being hating it and 50 loving it. But these days I feel it's mostly loved, which is great, because I love You as well. It's really amazing album. But 15 Big Ones is, I feel, an interesting project, because, well, let's go straight into it. The packaging, the cover, well, it's very cheesy, but I actually like it. I think they all look cool, and I love it that they actually are in the album cover, because it's, I don't know, it includes the first time that it has this classic Beach Boys logo that everybody around the world really recognizes. I mean, it's a legendary. I love it, and I don't think it's a bad album cover at all. I actually dig it a lot. It's a little bit cheesy, yeah, but so is the music also, so it actually fits it quite well. And the back cover, I really love. I love that they actually have all these notes saying who plays on what and who wrote what, and this stuff is usually missing on Beach Boys albums, and I think it probably was pretty unusual to put this stuff on here back then as well. So anyway, I think it's great because this album has a lot of players. There's a lot of session musicians and featuring background vocalists and you know, a lot of people over here. It's just, but it's also great to see how much the Beach Boys themselves really like the core members, five core members did on this album. So it's cool to see that Carl actually played bass, if that's true, on Back Home over here. I think there are some mistakes in these notes, but anyhow, the Beach Boys do play a lot of instruments on this album as well with the other musicians. And I just love this gatefold. These images are fun to look at. You can really spend like 2 hours. You can spin this album 3 or 4 times while watching these photographs and, you know, wondering the stories behind them. They all look very cool over here, and it kind of wraps up this whole timeline from their start until this point over here. And they even have a Glenn Campbell over there, which is cool. Ooh, not there, but there. Maybe you can see him. I don't know. But he's there. I completely just dig it. The music itself is interesting. I think the main reasons or the main criticism that this album gets, well, mostly 2 points. First, Brian sounds awful, and 2, the cover songs. Oh, sorry, I'm giving you the finger over there, but that's how I'm counting too. Well, I should have probably had the two fingers there. Anyhow, okay, I'm sorry. The second reason being that the cover songs are lackluster, not great, or just that they are disappointed that there isn't more original songs, and I get that. I completely can understand that, but the first one I don't understand. I actually love Brian's rougher voice. I loved it from the first listen. I can completely understand that if you were following the career when it was happening, that you were sad about the fact that his voice has changed. I can completely understand that. But re-evaluating it from, you know, like this album is almost 50 years old and you cannot change the history. I think it's time to re-evaluate some of this stuff. And as I was born much later, I was able to actually listen to these songs in the sense of knowing that it's history and knowing that I cannot change it. So I didn't have any sort of judgments or like these expectations while listening to any of the Beach Boys albums. I just took them as they were, and this was one of like great examples of that, because when I actually got around listening to this the first time, I was so surprised of how much I loved the whole album. I thought that the production was amazing. It was produced by Brian, and a lot of times you hear online that this album is produced, that Brian just wasn't able to do any justice for the songs, and the production just sucks. It sounds horrible, and they all sing horribly and stuff like that. And I'm not a very technical guy, so I don't know what they did differently around this time period. But I believe that this album is one of the best sounding albums that they did in the 70s, probably during all time, really. It sounds so freaking good, especially on vinyl. And there's incredible clarity. The mixing is done very well. There's a lot of stuff happening in a lot of these tracks, which I would guess that makes it kind of hard to mix. And it obviously was done with precision. I dig the way this album sounds right from the get-go. There are a few tracks obviously that were recorded during a little bit different time period, which have a little bit different sound, but 90% of the tracks over here were recorded in the same sessions, so to speak, so they sound very similar, and I love that. It obviously was a very weird decision to include half of covers and half of originals, especially with the Beach Boys, because Beach Boys were known of their great and are known of their great songwriting. So it is a very strange decision indeed to do it that way, but at least it does have 15 tracks, which to me is great, because it's not like you get 5 originals and 5 covers. You actually get a lot of songs on this album, and probably would have been a better decision to release this as a double LP, with the LP1 having the originals and LP2 having the cover songs. And I think that would have probably pleased the fans a lot more, because obviously you had to wait for 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, I don't know, 3.5 or something like that. Anyway, for this album, in between, Holland and 15 Big Ones. And probably during that time it felt like forever. But these days, 3 years is it's a pretty short, actually, a short period between albums by a group. So anyhow, but yeah, I mean, personally, I always just loved the way Brian sounds on this album. I think he's really singing great. He still has his high voice when he's singing those high notes on Rock and Roll Music, or really any of these songs. He's all over this album. He sounds great, and a lot of people criticized his vocals on Chapel of Love, which I always thought were great. That's a fun song. I really enjoy the way it's arranged over here. One of the biggest kicks that I get out of this album is the way it uses synthesizer. I think Brian was really great, and I wish that he would have followed more of this style of production, where you have a lot of these old school instruments like horns and piano and obviously guitars and these acoustic instruments, and then there are these kind of quirky bass lines played with Moog bass, for example. It's just so unique, and the way it's produced and mixed, that the bass is usually pretty high, and then there's drums which sound great on this album. The drums are pretty apparent. Well, anyhow, I'm just going all over the place right now, so let's go very fastly just through with each track, because this has a lot of tracks. Rock and Roll Music is probably my most listened version of this song. I really love it. I like it a lot more than the Beatles one. I know I'm probably in the minority, but I really love it. I love how Brian sounds. I mean, it's not very prominent on this mix, but I love his high notes on it. I love Mike's vocals. I love the drum fills, the guitar slides, and it kicks ass. I really love it. I think it's great. It's okay. One of the great summer songs. It's just 2 minutes track with a lot of things happening. I love Dennis's vocals in it. It's just the claps, the whole thing. It's just so groovy. I love it. I completely love it. That bass line, it's amazing. Hatuphonia, I don't know. It's just perfect. It's really one of those songs that Brian does so well, with a very cozy feeling. Just a casual thing, something mundane, and he can really do a great song about a thing like that. Not many people really can do that, and I love it how each member gets their own lead vocal spot. I love that. It's great. Chapel of Love, like I said, I dig it. I think it's great. I love the synths. I like how Brian sounds on it. It's a fun song. Everyone's in Love with You. That's one of my least favorite tracks on this album, but I still like it. The intro's great, Mike sounds great, and maybe it's a little bit wishy-washy because the first 3 or 4 tracks I think are pretty solid, kind of rocky. So it's change of mood, and I don't know. Well, it's an all right track, but not one of my favorites. Talk to Me is pretty great. Probably my least favorite of the covers on this album, but it's still a solid one. And then there's that medley thing, which works quite well, with that Tallahassee thing. It's all right. Then that same song is a great song, but the version on this album just could have been better, I feel. But I love that song anyhow. I think it's a really fun song. TM song is my least favorite on the whole album. It's not really even a song, it's more like a jingle, and I think it should have been left out. But I like that little part at the end, that like 15 seconds or whatever it lasts, when Brian counts 1, 2, 3, and then you got the faster part. I love that part, but otherwise it's just not my type of a song. Palisades Park, probably my favorite of all the covers over here. I think it rocks hard. Carl's vocals are great, and it's a great song. Production is great. It's very moody. I love that feeling that song has. Susie Cincinnati is an older song. I think it's one of the better songs that Al ever did. It's great, and Dennis is very prominent on it vocally in the background, and Al rocks out really great. I think it's great, but I'm just not. The lyrics just make me wonder: is it really about a cab driver or a prostitute? Like, I'm serious. Like, it's just strange. The lyrics are really very weird to me. I don't know. But it's a great song anyhow. Casual Look, great vocals by Mike, great cover. Yeah, I dig it. Very old schooly. And to be honest, I have to mention about these covers. I'm quite young, and I'm not that familiar with the original recordings. I think I've listened to all these covers, all the originals of these covers once or twice at least. Some even more, like in the Still of the Night, obviously, and Just Once in My Life and stuff like that. Blueberry Hill maybe, but I'm not that familiar with them. So I never had any sort of prior like ideas of how these songs should be done. So that's kind of, I mean, it's probably, you would probably think differently of these songs if you loved the original ones and you knew them so well before hearing these. I just had to mention that. Blueberry Hill is one of the best covers on this album. It's great. Mike's vocals are amazing, and that intro is so eerie, I feel, and the way it builds up. You have on this recording, there's a lot of these Wrecking Crew members, and it's hard to do that just any better. Like, that is pretty perfect to me. I just cannot understand how somebody would say that this sucks. I just wouldn't understand. I cannot understand that. Anyhow, I think it's great. Back Home, personally, I feel that this version is the best version of this track. I know I'm in the minority. A lot of people like the earlier 60s version. Well, I actually think this is the best one. I think Brian's having a lot of fun on it. I think the bass rocks really hard. And if that really is Carl playing it, kudos, I think. That's the way you say it. It's really great. Anyway, it's mostly just Brian and Carl on the instruments, and Dennis on drums. I love it. It's very groovy, has a country vibe. I love the song itself. It's fun, and in this context, to me it's kind of weird. Brian singing about going back home and feeding the chickens. It's just like, to me that's kind of weird, and I love it. It's just interesting. Anyway. let's move forward. In the Still of the Night, I love that song, the original one, and I think this version rocks really hard. It's great. The drums are amazing. Dennis sings it really well. It fits his voice. Very, very, very good. You know, it's excellent. Love it. And just once in my life. Very interesting backing track with the synthesizers. Cole and Brian on the lead vocal. That is, it's almost like I would love to have a full album with songs with that sort of production and that style, that mood. And it's a shame that it never happened really. Like, yeah, I Love You has some similarities, but I don't know. It's just something that could have been, I feel, because it has a, it kind of reminds of me of some of the Spectre work with that wall of sound, feel, but it's done with different instruments and in a different way. The mood is different. It's a very, very unique combo. I love it. Overall, I don't think it has a single bad track. TM song and Everyone's in Love with You, maybe I could take or leave. I don't care that much about them. But otherwise, I mean, it has 15 tracks. It has 10 plus very solid tracks. Overall, I think it's a very underrated album. It's a great 70s album by the group. Sounds amazing, and I think I highly recommend that if it's been a long time that you actually listen to this, try to listen to it with good headphones or a good speaker set, and try to just put out all the stories and all the stuff that you might remember of this period. Just listen to the album itself, and maybe you'll like it a little bit more. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But I love it. I always loved it. It's fun. I just wonder why Al looks that way. Is it a mystery symbol for does it mean something? I don't know, it's weird, but yeah. Anyway, let's move forward. We are almost there. I'm sorry this video wasn't supposed to be this long, but it turned out to be quite long anyhow. I should have done maybe this in many parts, but well, let's go to the 80s. And from the 80s I really could have chosen any album. I mean, they didn't put out that much studio albums, but I ended up choosing the first one that they put out in the 80s, 1980, Keeping the Summer Alive. And let's start off from the cover once again. I love it. I think it's great to have the group represented in the cover picture over here. They all look cool in this drawn image, and I like the polar bears, and I enjoy the back cover a lot as well, even though polar bears and penguins don't actually live on the same poles, but whatever. Alvin, is that Alvin, or was Alvin the one that did the art? I don't know, but I don't think it says it over here. Yeah. Anyhow. I think it's a solid album. Let's dive into it. It was produced by Bruce Johnston, and this is it's not Bruce's, fault. This album has the worst sound, I think, out of these three, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. I don't think it's badly produced at all. But it sounds a bit thinny, I think. The sequence of the tracks on this album are not listed correctly on the back cover of the album, so I'm gonna need to read them from the vinyl because I don't remember them exactly how they appear. But anyway, it starts off with Keeping the Summer Alive, which is a great song by Carl, and it's one of my all-time favorite fun Beach Boys tracks. It's so much fun to listen to that while driving during summertime. And yeah, some people say that the lyrics are cheesy or whatever. I never thought so. I think it's fun for what it is. I think the production of Keeping the Summer Alive is actually, that song is actually pretty good. I like it. I think the guitars sound great, and I think the percussion sounds great on that track, and the vocals are amazing. I love that bridge part. It's just a powerhouse type of song. I really like it, and it's such a sadness that it wasn't a big hit. I don't think it even was released as a single, which is criminal to me. I mean, what was happening over there? That's a great song, and it should have been a huge hit. Then we have "Oh Darling," which is Brian and Mike written song, and I think it's a very great song. Yeah, I mean, I could do without the God Only Knows part at the end, but otherwise I think it's a great melody and not a bad track at all. I like it a lot. "Oh Darling" is followed by "Some of Your Love," which I love. It's a great song. Once again, a song by Brian and Mike, the classic combo, and it's very groovy and it rocks hard. It's one of my favorite Beach Boys tracks ever. I really like it. I never understood why some people hate this song. I just think it's so great. It's fun and it's so catchy. And I'd love to, if I was able, if I knew how to sing and play, I would love to do a cover version of it, because I think it's a very, very underrated song and it needs more love. It really does. Then we have "Living with a Heartache," which is once again a Carl Wilson song. It's a great country styled track. Very different for the Beach Boys. It's a bit on the longer side. I don't mind that at all. I think it's a great song, and I love country music, so it's not a problem for me that it has that feeling. I think it's a really, really cool track. Then we have "School Day," "Ring Ring 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 Goes the Bell," which is a Chuck Berry tune, and it's sang by Al Jardine over here, and I could do without it. I mean, it's not a bad cover, but it's kind of like a leftover from 15 Big Ones, and I just don't know why it is here. I just think it's kind of boring, to be honest. It's, like I said, it's not bad, but I could do without it. And then we have side B, and it starts off with a great one, "Going On," which is once again a Brian and Mike track, and that's probably the highlight of this album. Most people would say that that's the best one out of this whole album, and I think it's a classic. It reminds me a lot of the Queen songs that Queen was doing around this time period, and even a little bit later. If you just switch the sax solo and make it a Brian May guitar solo, it's basically a Queen song, Queen type of a song. And yeah, I mean, Brian sounds so great on it. He does those backing vocals, few little parts, and he has very rough sounding kind of. I mean, I don't know. He just really nailed that emotion on those little parts that he does. Yeah, that do 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 or whatever, that's just so great. He sounds so amazing. "Sunshine," a lot of people don't like this song, and I don't know why, because I think it's so fun. I think it's catchy, and the bass thing, how it goes, that I don't even. I mean, I almost tried to sing it, but I cannot really sing it. But how that bass goes, like with this sweeping type of way, I think it's arranged really interestingly. And I know it's like this. Some people call it mockingly white boy reggae, and I can understand that it might sound a little bit phony, but I don't know. I always liked it. I think it's a fun song. It's groovy, and I dig it. It's simple, but who cares, And I think it's fun that Brian actually went and wrote another song with the same title for Imagination. But hey, yeah, let's move forward. "When Girls Get Together," that's a song from the Sunflower Sessions. So, it's one of my least favorite Beach Boys tracks, I think. The backing track is all right, but the lyrics and the way the lead vocal and melody line, that whole thing, I'm just not a big fan of. So, yeah, I think it's misplaced over here. If they really needed to duck some old tracks to fill up this album, they could have really taken any other song from those sessions and it would have been better, as the Feel Flows box set shows, in my opinion at least. But I think it's out of place here anyway. Then we have Santa Ana Wins, which is, I think, one of the best songs by Alan. And yeah, I think I would love to hear a mix without that spoken part in the beginning, because the intro is cool. I think the whole mic sounds really great on this. I love the little phaser, or whatever you call that, effect that his vocals have on this song. I think that sounds great. I mean, not everybody likes it, but I like it. The whole song is great. It's folksy. I love the lyrics, the whole mood of it. It's very, fits well with Living with the Heartache and Oh Darling, the whole sound of this album. Really love that song. And then the album ends with Endless Harmony, which is a song by Bruce Johnston. I believe he wrote it first, probably like 10 years earlier or something like that. I think it was quite old song at this point already. And I don't like it. It's probably my least favorite Beach Boys tracks ever. I would say it's probably, in my opinion, even worse than Hey Little Tomboy. I just don't like it at all. So yeah, but it's at the end, so I never actually listen to it. I just pretend that the record stops at Santa Ana Wins. I just have a problem with both the instrumentation, the lyrics are, I don't know, they are beyond cheesy to me. Some people like it, and that's cool. I don't, no hate for anybody that, likes it. I just personally never was able to enjoy it. I always try to do my best to enjoy even the songs that I feel are, less interesting to me. But that was just a song that I was never really able to enjoy. And obviously the saddest thing about this album is the thing that I didn't mention, which is that it was Dennis's last album, and that he actually isn't even really on it. I think he's only on Endless Harmony, playing drums or something like that. He's pretty much the guys. I think it was recorded during the time period when he was kicked out of the band, and then they went on tour, and he came back, and then they never were able to, do another album before '85, and it's sad because, it just reminds me of how things could have been. So, it is what it is anyhow. But that was it. Let's take a fun thumbnail. I'm gonna do like some question marks on these albums. Maybe like, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to do this. Oh no, maybe like this. I don't know. This is hard because it's mirror image over there. I need to show my face as well. Maybe this one over here, and I don't know. I know that looks very weird, but I sometimes it's fun to leave those little things in the video. What do you think? You can completely disagree with me. I'm fine by that. I don't mind. But I love these albums, all of these. I listen to these a lot, really. I do. I love to listen to the 70s and 80s Beach Boys albums, and I wish that there was more written. I wish that the stories of these albums would be told more often. I think it's very sad that when there's a documentary of the group or a book written about it or whatever, or a story told, it's always surfing music, Pet Sounds, Smile, and then fast forward to whatever point, is it 2012 or 90s or whatever. It's stupid, I think, because a lot of these songs are actually great, whether you like the production or not. But you got to admit that the songwriting in itself, maybe minus the lyrics, to some people, whatever, but the songs, they have some very good songs, even the worst Beach Boys albums. But anyhow, thanks for watching, and see you probably once again, hopefully soon, on the next video. Take care. Bye bye.